In a period lost in the unrecorded shadow of time, long before the Christian era, Indian merchants, warriors, philosophers, and religious preachers began their voyage to far-off lands across the ocean. They have left their indelible impact on the culture, faith, and worldview of the people of these lands. We take you on a voyage of rediscovery to witness these Indian imprints on the sands of time.
This is a self-portrait of Indonesia's most renowned and internationally acclaimed artist, Affandi. And now we are in the Affandi Museum at Yogyakarta. Affandi has been honored by several institutions around the world. He received the honorary doctorate of the Singapore University and received the Dag Hammarskjöld Prize from Italy, among several other recognitions that he got from art connoisseurs worldwide. Here is another interesting sculpture of Affandi and his little daughter Kartika, made in 1943, created by Affandi himself. We thought it would be interesting to meet this baby, Affandi, and we have with us Affandi's daughter Kartika, who is a highly renowned, internationally acclaimed artist in her own right, and we have great pleasure in talking to Kartika and getting her impressions of India.
In particular, will you kindly explain how your father got interested in Indian art and narrate your own experience of traveling with him to India when he got a Government of India fellowship to study in Shantiniketan, and how Shantiniketan received him?
Probably I should begin with how my father interested in the Hinduism, because before he started to go to India, he made several sketches in Prambanan Temple. And then late 49, we went to via Singapore to India because the scholarship was only for one person, and we used for 3 person. That means my mother, including me. So we have to buy the ticket, very, very simple one, without a cabin. And on the way, we have seen several landscape, and Papa said, "Wow, this is really a great country that I'm able to paint a lot." And then when we arrived in Shantiniketan and we was accepted by the director of the art college in the university, and then he said, when he showed his work, all of them, he said, "Mr. Affandi, you are already an artist. You don't have to study with us. But I think the best is I would like to try to my government once in 3 months, you go back to Shantiniketan and then travel wherever you like to go. But I will make a plan. And to save our money, that was really very generous of the director. That was Mr. Nandalal Bose.
Afandi painted his loving daughter while they enjoyed Indian hospitality at Shantiniketan. It was obviously a very hot summer in India, and with a sense of humor, the great artist portrayed it with a painting of 7 suns in the sky with Afandi himself at the center. Meanwhile, the Indonesian leader Dr. Sukarno wrote to Jawaharlal Nehru seeking his help to send Afandi to Europe from India. And indeed, the Indian Prime Minister took action on that. As Karthika said, Afandi's love for India and Hinduism started with his frequent visits to the Prambanan temple on the outskirts of Yogyakarta. The Prambanan temple, dedicated to the worship of Shiva, Vishnu and Brahma, was built in the 9th century, about 50 years later than Borobudur. Based on an inscription, it is generally believed that it was built by King Rakai Pikatan of Mataram, which was a Hindu kingdom. The largest Chandi in the center is for Shiva, with a dizzying height of 47 meters. There is a Shiva statue in the sanctum of the tower. There are statues of Durga, Agastya and Ganesha in the smaller chambers. The 2 Chandis for Vishnu and Brahma on either side of the Shiva Chandi are slightly smaller. There are 3 smaller Chandis for Nandi, Garuda and Hamsa, the Vahanas or God's mounts, facing these 3 main Chandis. In the surrounding courtyard, there are 224 other sanctums for Parivara Devatas. The sanctums of the Vishnu and Brahma Chandis have statues of Vishnu and Brahma respectively. The Prambanan temple is also known as Lolo Jogran temple, named after a local princess identified with Durga. Although the Prambanan temple suffered damages due to some earthquakes and volcanic eruptions of Mount Merapi over 1,000 years, it was in reasonably good shape till the 19th century, after which it needed much renovation. The colossal work of reconstruction was completed by the Indonesian government in the 1950s. Prambanan is famed not only for being the largest Hindu Chandi in this part of the world, but also for the artistry of the Ramayana reliefs that decorate the inside walls of the balustrade on both the Shiva and the Brahma Chandis. In a remarkable relief, you have an elephant trying to wake up Kumbhakarna from his deep sleep during the war. The reliefs in the Vishnu Chandi are dedicated to Krishnayana, as the story of Krishna is known in Indonesia. In Shiva's Chandi, there are also several dancing Shivas or Natarajas in the reliefs in the base of the tower. There are also a large number of dance reliefs portraying several of the 108 Karanas of Bharata's Natya Shastra. We are told that there has been no organized worship here in Prambanan for several centuries. But there is today an undeclared form of worship, for we do perceive divinity in the Ramayana ballet rehearsals here. With the active support of the Sultan of Yogyakarta and of the government of Indonesia, a very colorful Ramayana dance ballet is performed every day here throughout the year. Sometimes it is the full version of the story when 200 artists participate. On other days, a few selected scenes are presented for about 1 hour. On most days, the dance show is on the open air stage, with the Prambanan temple providing the unique background. The ballet is performed on rainy days too, but in the adjacent, smaller, covered auditorium. If we may repeat our theme song of Indonesia's spirit of multiculturalism, all the dancers and musicians who perform in the Ramayana ballet are Muslims in this predominantly Islamic country. On Thursday, the 25th of May 2006, we were filming in this Prambanan temple. Unfortunately, within 48 hours, the city of Yogyakarta and these surrounding regions experienced a tragic catastrophe, a disastrous earthquake that has resulted in a tragic loss of many lives in this region, reflected by this damage to the Brahma Chandi at Prambanan. As I stand here a few days later, although we are unable to get into the monument since it is closed for security reasons, we are relieved to find that the Chandis are not as badly affected as we feared they may have been. 6 months later, as I am editing this episode of Indian Imprints back in India, our Indian Embassy in Jakarta informs us that the monument still remains closed for visitors. The Government of India is extending its cooperation to the Indonesian authorities for assessing the damage and for reconstruction work as early as practical. Indeed, the Prambanan temple is deeply etched in the psyche of Indonesia.
So